or tweet into the show at 1045 The Team. It's Big Board Sports with Roger Wyland on 1045 The Team.
Well, Giants are in the playoffs. That happened over the weekend, and despite their loss on Thursday night to Philly, they are still in it. They do not have to go to Washington and win the game outright. That Washington game now is really a meaningless game. They're going to go on the road to play to the Packers, Seattle, Atlanta, or Detroit. Which team do they want to play? But more importantly, how are they going to play the scenario in Washington on Sunday with a 4:25 kick? Paul Schwartz, New York Post beat writer, joins the program here on this Tuesday after the holiday. And good morning to you. Paul, how are you today?
Good morning, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
We are phenomenal, no doubt. I guess kind of a big decision here from head coach Ben McAdoo, right, as to how he wants to handle this meaningless Washington Redskin game.
Well, the football coaches will always stare at you very unkindly when you use the word meaningless, right? There's no meaningless competitive events going on out there, but it is certainly the Giants cannot go up or down. They are in the number 5 spot in the NFC wild card picture, so they cannot do anything. Now, the Redskins win and in.
Yeah.
So what obligation do the Giants have to play a fairly straight game and play a competitive game for the Redskins? I don't think this will be wholesale substitutions. You really can't, Roger, if you think of it. You know what I mean? Put it this way. Let's say people say, they should rest their starters, right? They have 7 offensive linemen active on game day. Okay, so you can rest 2 of them, right? You can't you can't rest Odell, Cruz, and Shepard. There's not enough other receivers out there. You can't rest the 2 tight ends. You only have 3 on the whole team. So there's only 3 or 4 running backs. You can certainly rest Eli, which they won't. I mean, Eli's going to start the game.
Oh, yeah.
His 198 game consecutive starting streak in the regular season is not going to end because of this. So I think Ben McAdoo will use his roster judiciously. Guys who are hurting won't play or will play limited. Don't forget, they've had 10 days in between games from the Thursday night game in Philly, so this will be a fairly rested team anyway.
Does it concern you? And of course, Eli never gets hurt, but you do see over the weekend, Paul, where Derek Carr, broken leg, and then Marcus Mariota broke his leg. Does that, if you're Ben McAdoo, do you just kind of go, wow, yeah, I am rolling the dice a little bit? Eli never gets hurt, but there's always that first time.
Yes. I mean, if he doesn't play, he's not going to get hurt unless someone runs him over on the sideline, right? So, if you play 7 plays, he could get hurt on the second or third one. I don't think they're going to have Eli doing a whole lot of rollouts and having, I think they'll max protect, but I do think they're going to try to win the game. And like I said, I do think Eli will start. I don't know if he'll finish, but I think he'll start. You're rolling the dice with a lot of things, but I just don't see how you're going to hand the keys to this offense, even in the game that the Giants don't need anything. Don't forget, their backup quarterback, Johns Johnson, has never played a snap with the Giants in the preseason or in the regular season. He was new, and he didn't play in the preseason, and he hasn't played this year. So that would be kind of funky.
Hey, Paul, on Christmas Day, you wrote that the Giants need to do 5 things before the playoffs start. Can you explain exactly what you detailed in the post and among those 5, what is of chief importance?
Well, wait a second, Zach. Don't you have the 5 there? I mean, wait. I wrote the darn thing. I thought you were going to ask me which of these 5 you found most important, or that's like you're the kind of guy who always wanted multiple choice in school, right?
I did. That was me.
Yeah, you said, look, just put the answer down there somewhere, and I'll try to find it. Okay? Don't make me just get the answer. Yes, I did write 5 things, Zach, and I'm sure you read that and researched it very carefully. I mentioned about resting players. I mentioned about resting Eli. Eli played 3 games in 12 days before this break, and his most recent one in Philly was not his finest, and I thought his arm looked a little weary. He said his arm was fine. I think the main thing is of that 5 things I'd like to see is they have to get their defense healthy. The defense has carried this team all year. Janoris Jenkins did not play in the game in Philly, with a pretty bruised back, pretty severely bruised back. I think he will be, I think if they had to play on a Sunday instead of a Thursday, he would have had a good chance to play. So I think he'll ready to roll. But Snacks Harrison came out of that game and then went back in with a knee. Eli Apple had an ankle. Jonathan Casillas is battling a knee issue. He doesn't practice much. Keenan Robinson, their cover linebacker, has had shoulder. So they need to make sure they go into that first playoff game with all those guys I mentioned. Jonathan Hankins with some issues, as ready to go as possible. And so I think that's where you're going to see perhaps some of these guys who are a little dinged up will play not at all or limited against the Redskins. I don't think it's wholesale substitutions, but if you had an aching pain or you cough once or twice that week, you're not going to play much.
Time was Paul Schwartz, New York Post, Giants in the playoffs as the 5 seed. And, of course, we know what Tom Coughlin did in 2007. How much do you think Ben McAdoo is thinking about that, or goes back to 2007 and go, yeah, I saw what the Giants did. They got a lot of momentum. Eli talked about, momentum for the offense and playing a lot better and feeling good about yourself. Even though they got beat by New England in that game, their offense played really well, and it kind of carried over into winning 3 games on the road and then going to beat New England in the Super Bowl.
It did, yes. I mean, I would dare say that the Giants don't beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 42 if they rest all their guys in the last regular season game and mail that game in. It gave them a lot of confidence that they could move the ball and score and certainly play with the Patriots. That was different, though. Don't forget, the Patriots were 15-0. I felt Coughlin felt he had an obligation to play it straight, to not let them walk to a perfect regular season record. Out of that game, guys, the Giants lost 2 starters. In that game against the Patriots in 2007. They lost Sean O'Hara, their center, and they lost Kavika Mitchell, their starting linebacker. Neither of those 2 guys played in the first round game against the Bucs, which the Giants won. So, it's not like they came out of that game unscathed. I think what McAdoo will take more from that 2007 experience was he was on the Green Bay Packers staff and watched as the Giants came into Lambeau with Brett Favre and in, Ice Bowl 2 beat his Packers. He brings that up often. The Giants twice in the playoffs went into Lambeau when McAdoo was an assistant coach in Green Bay and beat them. I think McAdoo was cognizant of that, but I think he will do what he sees fit. And I think he'll play it fairly straight. Other than, like I said, the guys who were dinged up.
And in my opinion, Paul, the Giants are going to win games in the postseason because of the defense, not necessarily the offense. We've seen this offense all year. I thought they would be better offensively. They really haven't. So I don't know what one game and one performance against the Washington Redskins is going to mean going into the postseason.
Oh, I agree. Right. I look, you want everyone on the upswing and feeling good, no question. But if they go out and score 28 points against the Redskins, is that... It's good. It makes everybody feel good. But then if they're going to play Seattle the next week, do you think they're going to, say, well, we'll score 28 points on the Seahawks too in Seattle? Yes, the playoffs are different, whole different animal. So I agree. You want guys healthy, and you want guys on an uptick. You do. But Eli Manning said yesterday, look, we're going to be going into the playoffs confident no matter what happens in that last regular season game. You'd like to think so, but, you never know. Also, the Giants, look, they lost to the Eagles, a hated division rival in Philly. They do not have a great track record this year on the road at all. Their only good win on the road is the first game of the season, at Dallas. That was excellent. They've beaten the Rams in London, no big deal. They've beaten the Browns in Cleveland, less than no big deal. They've lost to the Steelers on the road. They've lost to the Packers on the road. They've lost to the Vikings on the road. Now they've lost to the Eagles on the road. Now you go in and you mail it in against the Redskins and lose to another pretty good team on the road. That doesn't set you up great for success in the playoffs on the road either.
Which team do you think they would match up better with on the road right now? And these are the 4 teams that they would want. They're going to play one of them on the road: Green Bay, Seattle, Atlanta, or Detroit.
Well, I mean, I think conventional wisdom is the Lions. They have beaten the Lions, 2 weeks ago, right, holding them to 6 points. The Lions certainly did not look like world beaters last night against the Cowboys. Lions are a good team. I think the Giants can score on the Lions, even though they didn't do an easy job, have an easy time of that, 2 weeks ago. I think the Giants certainly can defend the Lions. We saw that. So I think that would be number one. It's indoors in Detroit, a team that doesn't have a lot of playoff success. That would be my number one spot for the Giants. I think, believe it or not, the Falcons would be number two. Prolific offense, certainly, but I think you can score on the Falcons. Also, I think the Falcons are a better version of the Lions. Indoors, Eli usually plays well indoors. I think that's a game they can win. I think the third choice would be the Packers. They've had success in that building, certainly. The only caveat there is Aaron Rodgers is playing out of his mind. The Packers are on an incredible roll. They will take a big winning streak into the playoffs if they beat the Lions next week in the NFC North Championship showdown. That would be a very tough spot for the Giants. But, the Giants played fairly well defensively against the Packers this year. And I just think Seattle is a very difficult place to play. I mean, that's no revelation. Think of the Giants' offensive line going into Seattle against that defensive front with that crowd in that environment. Very tough matchup.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on the way you laid out those teams and who the Giants would prefer to play on the road. Paul Schwartz, always a pleasure. We'll tell Will Brown that you said hello. We have Coach Brown. Any questions for Coach Brown at 11 o'clock this morning?
Well, you can tell Coach Brown that he will expect a text from me fairly soon because I'm planning on coming to the game in Columbia. You guys will be at the Columbia game?
We will. So can we pencil you in for a halftime guest already? Don't think you're going to get off easy just sitting in the stands doing nothing watching the game.
Halftime guest in Columbia, Morningside Heights. Book me for it. The usual halftime gifts will be fine. Bring a satchel or some kind of thing. I can bring them home on the subway. That will be fine. No, let me ask you: are they going to be? Is their front line? Is that there's one kid that they're waiting for who's been hurt, right?
Yeah, Jerron Lands.
Yeah, and he may play. You may see him on Friday at Columbia.
Yeah, he's supposed to come back.
Yeah,
and I heard he's might be their most talented postman. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's in that conversation.
He's in the conversation, and he's a beast on the boards.
So that will really help them.
No, big time.
Yeah, especially in conference.
Yeah, no doubt.
And they should beat Columbia or not? How's Columbia?
Columbia is they haven't played many games. They're 5-4. They're just okay. They were a tournament team last year, though.
Yep.
So.
Well, we're going to ask Will Brown all of that coming up in his coaching segment at 11. I'll tell him you said hi and that he will see you on Friday at Columbia.
Yes, thanks, guys. Anytime.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Schwartz, great job, New York Post, New York Giants beat writer.